There are like two things that can come to mind when the word depression is mentioned in a public space. It's either you relate to that feeling, you understand what it feels like, or you don't understand what it feels like, and you feel like the people that claim they are depressed, they are just making excuses for their lives. Well, today's episode is dedicated to everyone who has been depressed before and probably is still depressed, and also everyone that doesn't know what depression feels like. Because in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about depression. I'm going to shed light on what depression is, what it feels like, and what actually causes depression. And I like to make sure that whatever I'm putting out on this podcast is not just as a result of my own experiences, but also an addition of other people's experiences. So before recording today's episode, I went in search of what other people described as the feeling of depression, and what I'm about to share is the best reply I feel resonated with my own experience and also with other people I know that have struggled with depression and are still struggling with depression. Now, the person said, depression feels like you've been mentally and emotionally raped by the world and your circumstance to the point where you no longer care about anything. You become a completely different person. Things you once liked, such as your hobbies, shows, or forms of entertainment, no longer bring you happiness, which makes coping hard. You feel like you're reliving the day over and over again with nothing to look forward to. Your heart feels like it has been shredded, then lit on fire, even months after what initially broke it. It feels like this awful sinking feeling in your chest that never goes away. Over time, you don't even recognize yourself, and when people ask you, how are you? You just tend to fake a smile and give a fake reply because you don't want to bother someone else with your pain. If what I just said resonated with you, I just want you to know that you are not alone. And if at all you didn't relate to anything I just said, that's totally fine. I just want you to still listen to the end of today's episode because you can help someone that you're close to that is probably struggling with feelings of depression. Welcome to Healthy Minds Talk, a podcast created to help you grow, bring awareness to mental health, and also remind you that it's not all in your head. There's hope, even when your brain tells you there isn't. I'm Praise Victor, and I remain your host on this show. I was speaking to one of my friends days ago, and he said he's had recent conversations with people that didn't know they were depressed or going through a hard time mentally. And I wasn't surprised because it's easy to normalize a thing when you've been in or stayed in that same situation or environment for a long time. So even if it looked weird at the beginning, because you've dealt with that now, because you're used to that feeling, because you're used to that cycle, you're used to that pattern, you feel like it's nothing new and that's just how it is and there's nothing you can do to change that. Well, for those that have depression but have just normalized it as sadness, here's what you need to know. Sadness is an emotion, while depression is a mental illness that impacts one mentally, emotionally, physically, behaviorally, and even spiritually. Sadness is temporary, but depression can last for so many years if it's not like well treated. Sadness is as a result of a negative event that's happening in the present, but depression is a complex effect of an event that could have happened years ago. So there is a thin line between the feelings of sadness and depression. And I just said this just to clarify the fact that if you have like recurrent feelings of sadness, then you might actually be getting close to that part where you are depressed. I am not a doctor, I am not a psychologist, and I am not diagnosing anyone that is constantly sad with depression. But when you constantly feel sad, then you might have to take a step back and just reflect and check on yourself and try to think that, when did this start happening to me? Did anything trigger this feeling, or why am I feeling this certain way? And there are like a lot of things you may not realize that you're doing because of depression, but I just listed a few here. And the first one is hiding in your phone as an escape from your thoughts, delaying chores for days or even weeks at a time, withdrawing from the things you once got a lot of pleasure from, breaking down over the seemingly little things that go wrong, avoiding talking or even thinking about your future, texting late at night so you're not alone with your thoughts, re-engaging with something that gave you comfort when you were younger, probably a TV show or a game or whatever it is that you found comfort in when you were small, and you just keep going back to that to just give you comfort, to just be that safe place for you, then you might probably be having feelings of depression. Now, there are a lot of signs of depression that you should never ignore, but I am just going to list the very common signs that I have seen in myself and other people. And the first one is talking hopelessly about the future or a negative circumstance you feel trapped in, feeling apathetic about the things you were once passionate about, constantly talking down on yourself, and expressing that you feel like a burden to your loved one. Basically, you don't want to talk to your loved ones about how you're feeling because you feel like they're already going through a lot. They already have their own issues that they're dealing with, and you feel like you don't matter. Like you are not that important to add your own burden to whatever it is they're going through. But I just want you to know that you are not a burden, okay? If you're having a hard time right now, or you're just going through a difficult phase in life, I just want you to try and take that bold step to open up to a loved one around you that you can trust, that you feel safe around, and you can express yourself around them. And if you do not have any, you can message me on Instagram. Another sign of depression that you should never ignore is withdrawing socially. You don't want to meet up with your friends again. You don't want to go out because you do not have the energy to maintain that lifestyle. You probably use the phrase "I'm tired" as an excuse to describe or explain a behavior that's unlike you. Probably you don't follow up on a conversation, or you get distracted, or you just get lost in a conversation and don't exactly focus or put your attention to things. It might not even be a conversation, it might be at work, it might be doing a house chore or so many other things, and you just like zone out. I'm fond of doing that, but zoning out, I'll use the word zoning out now. Zoning out and then using the phrase "I'm tired" as an excuse to just explain your behavior of zoning out, instead of opening up and saying that you got, so sorry, that was my system. Instead of just opening up and saying that you got lost in a train of negative thoughts or something, that is also a sign of depression that you should never ignore. Feeling numb about everything because you're emotionally drained is also a common sign of depression. So these are just signs of depression, and I'm just going to be moving on to the causes of depression that are not, like, they are not commonly talked about. Like, people don't talk about what causes depression. They just arrive at the fact that, okay, I'm depressed, I'm like having a really, really hard time mentally, and this has been going on for weeks, months, and I have reached that stage. But they never go deep down to the root of what caused, or what triggered those feelings. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Last month I read a book by Johann Hari. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. I actually got to know about him through this book that I'm going to be talking about today, and the book is titled Lost Connections: Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression and the Unexpected Solutions. And in today's episode, I am going to be sharing with you the shocking, absolutely mind-blowing revelations that I discovered in this book about depression. Normally, there are 3 areas to focus on while dealing with mental illness, and they are the biological, psychological, and social factors. And today, I'm going to be talking about everything: the biological factors, causes of depression, the psychological causes of depression, and the social causes of depression. So, according to Johann Hari, there are 9 to 10 major causes of depression, and they fall under disconnection from work, disconnection from other people, disconnection from meaningful values, disconnection from childhood trauma, disconnection from status and respect, disconnection from the natural world, disconnection from a hopeful or secure future, the role of the brain in causing depression, genes, the role of the genes, like your genetic factor in like as a cause of depression, and also the standards of culture. I think that's 10. There were actually 9 listed in the book, but I think I just like added my own 10th cause of depression. Anyways, disconnection from work. We're gonna be starting with disconnection from work. Now, disconnection from work, this is how this causes depression. Is basically just when you feel like you are stuck in a job that you'd rather not do, and while you're at this job you put in so much effort but you don't get the credit for it, you don't feel seen, and at the same time you just feel trapped because you feel like that's the only option you have, especially when you're like in a country like mine. I'm in Nigeria, and most of like Nigerian 9 to 5 jobs suck, and most people would rather not do it, but then there is not enough job opportunities in the country. So I feel like most people are stuck, they feel trapped in their workplace, but then they also feel like that's the only option they have, so they just keep going to work, keep doing it, like they just keep repeating that same cycle. Wake up, wake up very early in the morning, prepare for work, go to work, come back late at night because of the traffic, have your dinner, do some stuff for a few hours, go back to sleep, then you wake up the next morning, and the cycle just repeats itself. So in summary, you just feel trapped in a job that you hate, probably because you need the income you get from it to pay bills and do other stuff, other financial stuff, and you still do not get the credit for the work that you put in the job you hate. So basically, the feeling of depression can come up because in this kind of situation, you feel invisible because you are not appreciated for the work you put in, and you feel trapped because you would rather not be there, but you feel like there's no other choice for you. So this can actually cause depression. Another cause of depression is disconnection from other people. Now, this is like mostly known as loneliness, and we had an episode on loneliness, I think that was last 2-3 weeks, and we talked about loneliness, what it is, what it feels like, how to deal with it healthily, because there are healthy coping mechanisms and unhealthy coping mechanisms. But we talked about the healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with depression, sorry, for dealing with loneliness rather. And there we also talked about like the variation between being lonely and feeling alone. And I said that you can be lonely and not be alone. You can be in a public place and still feel alone, because it's the connection that we truly desire that is absent. And John Harry said that loneliness isn't the physical absence of other people, it's the sense that you're not sharing anything that matters with that matters to you with anyone else. So disconnection from other people, which is loneliness, can also be a cause of depression. And to end loneliness or to deal with loneliness, you just have to be in the midst of people. You don't rather have to be in the midst of people, because just like I said, you can be in the midst of people and still feel lonely, but you just have to share something meaningful that is meaningful to you with also other people. And I think if you haven't listened to the episode of loneliness, I strongly advise that you go listen to it after this episode, because they are like, I'm just like shortening this part of loneliness in this episode because I've talked about it before, and just listen to the past episode on loneliness because it has helpful factors, practical things that you can do. And also, I think I shared an online community that you can just go to and express yourself and just not feel alone, and share your feelings and find other people that also relate to the same way and just connect with people. I think I shared that in that episode. So I just want to say that in the case of loneliness causing depression, a one-way relationship cannot cure loneliness. Only a meaningful two-way relationship, or even more, because you have good friendships and all, they can help you to deal with the feelings of loneliness. And another cause of depression is disconnection from meaningful values. Now, when we talk about values in the society, there are so many values in the society, but I will just divide them into like 2 types: the intrinsic and the extrinsic values. Now, I'll say the intrinsic values are the ones we would have that would probably look meaningless to today's society, because but it means everything to you. Like, you really value this thing, but to the society is like, society is just like, why would you value this? Like, this is not what you should be focusing your energy and time on. And it might look meaningless to today's society because you aren't getting paid for it, or you are not increasing your status in your field or getting accolades for it. But nevertheless, it has meaning to you because it gives you happiness and a sense of fulfillment. So basically, your intrinsic values are not based on material possessions. For example, let's say you love playing the guitar for people because it's a way of expressing yourself and also soothing other people's nerves, but you don't collect money for it, you don't get paid for it, and people are just like, you can monetize this, but you don't want to because you just enjoy it. It's just an activity that you enjoy doing, and it doesn't just help you alone, but it also helps other people. So I would term that as an intrinsic value. That is just an instance, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And we also have the extrinsic values. And extrinsic values will tell you that you need to acquire more and more material possessions to be fulfilled. It tells you that you need to buy the car, the house, the new phone, get the job, and more money before you can be accepted for who you are. And when you pursue these values, you feel disconnected from people because you are only seen for your materialistic belongings, not for what you can truly offer. And when you spend so much time like prioritizing your extrinsic values, you have no sense of fulfillment because you would just constantly feel anxious. And why would you feel anxious? You'll be worried about what people think of you. You're constantly monitoring and watching yourself if what you do or what you offer pleases people. When your self-worth is tied to your materialistic belongings, you are forced into external comparisons. The more you're focused on getting approval from society by gaining more, by doing more, by just following the hustle culture, the less you are focused on the things that actually do matter, like true connections. It's just like being addicted to KFC. I love chicken, by the way, and which is why I use this as an example. But let's just say that it's just like being addicted to. I love chicken quite alright, but I didn't say I'm addicted to it. But anyways, I just wanted to clear that. Liken it to being addicted to KFC, for its taste and the momentary pleasure that you get from it, rather than focusing on consuming the healthy food that your body needs for growth. The more you think life is about having stuff, having material possessions and power and status and superiority and showing it off, the more unhappy, depressed, and anxious you'll be. Now, I'm not saying that it's not okay to have your own car or have your own house or have your own job, your constant steady sort of income. I am not against that, but I am just saying that when you focus on that more in life, you like put that at the center of your life, like that is the only thing that matters, you would just end up becoming unfulfilled, unhappy. Like, yeah, you have all of this stuff, but then it means you feel empty on the inside because you are not focusing on the intrinsic values that give you a sense of fulfillment. And nobody's values are fixed, which means that you can still change your values, right? If you focus more on the extrinsic values instead of the intrinsic values, you can still change that. You're not too old or too young to change that. You still have the chance to focus on doing what matters to you and to shut out the voices that tell you that you're not enough or acceptable till you possess something materialistic. So do not base your values in life on material possessions because they fade away. There's always the next new thing. Today you get an iPhone. Let me say, what is the latest iPhone? I don't know what the latest iPhone is right now. I think there's iPhone 13 now. Anyways, let's just say today you get an iPhone 13. Tomorrow, not like literally tomorrow, but then within a period of time another iPhone comes out, and then the value of that one fades away, and then you find yourself pursuing the next thing that has the next value in the society, and you're just constantly chasing material, chasing the bag, chasing the public view, the public status, and all of that. That actually can cause depression. Now, moving on to the next one, disconnection from childhood trauma. Now, I think I've talked about traumatic, I've like not really talked about traumatic childhoods, but I've mentioned it in a few episodes. And traumatic childhoods often produce depressed and anxious adults. Most people never recover from childhood trauma, and whether that's sexual abuse, domestic violence, emotional abuse, whatever it is that they went through, most people never recover from it, which is why they just engage in self-destructive behaviors. You know, when you're a child, you have very little power to change your environment. So you have two choices. You can either admit that you're powerless or tell yourself that it's your fault. And when you start thinking that the way you were treated as a child was your fault, you begin to think that you actually deserved it. And a person who thinks that they deserved to be injured or maltreated as a child isn't going to think that they deserve much better as an adult either. And which is why I always say that most of what happened in your childhood is a reflection of how you respond to things today. That's why I say that if you're a parent, just make sure that your child is taken care of, not just physically, not just meeting the physical needs, clothing, food, shelter, but also give them that emotional safety, because what they experience as children right now would reflect on how they view the world as a whole, and also how they would respond to their adult relationships. Like when they grow up to be an adult, it influences their relationships. Basically, if you see your friend or your loved one engaging in self-destructive behaviors like binge eating, smoking, I don't know what else, what other, there are so many other self-destructive behaviors, but if you like notice your friend engaging in self-destructive behaviors, you can ask them questions like, what happened, what makes you do that, or what makes you do what you do, like why do you do it? And do not ask them what's wrong with them. Do not think that, if you like see your friend or a loved one have maybe a sudden increase in weight, do not like body shame them or tell them that, like, oh, look at you, look at how fat you are, or other stuff like that crazy people do. Like, do not do that. If you see your friend rather either like gaining weight or losing weight, do not like body shame them. You should walk up to them and ask them that, like, is anything going on? Like, are they okay that you see the changes and you were just wondering if they're actually fine, or they just really love like to add more weight or lose weight? I don't know. Anyways, my point is, do not body shame your friends, okay? And do not criticize them for engaging in self-destructive behaviors. Instead, you should try to understand them, understand where they are coming from, their pain points, their past trauma, and all of that. So we're moving on to the next cause of depression, which is disconnection from status and respect. Now, we live in a society, I'm sorry if it sounded like I yelled, I didn't really mean to do that, but we live in a society where the respect you get is equivalent to the status you hold, and there are hierarchies. If you're like at the top of the hierarchy, you're constantly stressed about who your competition is and if they've attained the level of strength that you have, and you just become insecure about your position and the respect attached to it. And if you're at the bottom of the hierarchy, you might constantly feel humiliated and feel a sense of defeat. It's just like the rich and the poor. Let's just take, for example, the rich and the poor in our society. Or let's just better still use the example of the celebrities and the everyday human. Now, I'm not saying that celebrities are not also humans. We're all humans on this planet, okay? Some just have more respect than others because of their status, the status that they hold. And it's just like that you cannot see Kim Kardashian walking on the streets of like, you cannot just see Kim Kardashian walking on the street without like a bodyguard or something to protect her. And sometimes that might actually do make people feel like they're insecure. Like it can make them feel insecure about what they have, and they might strive so hard to get to that, you know, that place where they just have high status and there's just respect attached to that. And this is where this is like a situation where people just strive so much to get titles, and there's like respect attached to that title, but deep down you just feel like it doesn't give you that sense of fulfillment. Like you strive so hard to just get something, but at the end of the day when you get it, you do not like have the reaction that you always imagined, or the feeling that you always imagined that you have. So back to it. It can make people feel like they do not deserve like the same level of respect that Kim Kardashian does because she's a celebrity. I don't know, I just used Kim Kardashian as an example. For the people that don't like Kim Kardashian, no offense. I don't hate her anyways, but let's just move on. You can go outside and get yourself a bodyguard if you feel like you can afford it. But I'm just saying, my point is like we should build a society because it's we humans that make up the society, right? And we should build a society where everyone feels like they have an equal measure of respect and status. Like even though you do not have this title, even though you are not the president of this corporation, even though you are not the doctor, even though you are not the, I don't know what other big titles people have, like people prioritize these days, but even though you do not have that title attached to your name, that doesn't mean that you do not matter. That doesn't mean that you do not belong. Okay? Do not attach your self-worth to a title or a status. You are so much more than that. That title is just an indication of what they do. It's just like a description of their job. It does not make them who they are as people or as persons. Like your title does not determine who you are as a person. So just learn to separate your identity from your title. Okay? Yeah, that was basically the point of the last one, which was relating to disconnection from status and respect. And the next one is disconnection from the natural world. Now I feel like this is, so many people actually are disconnected from the natural world, and this can cause depression because when we stay disconnected from our natural habitat for long, we tend to feel depressed. That's why many self-help experts, and I've also said this, I'm not a self-help expert by the way, but I've said this in so many episodes, if not all the episodes I've had on this podcast, that take a walk. Like, it's so funny how so many, I've talked about different things on this podcast. I've talked about self-worth, I've talked about loneliness, I've talked about mental health and all of that. And in every episode, there is always that point of going outside, take a walk, take a stroll, just go outside in the sun, get some sunlight. Because if you are disconnected from your natural habitat, which is outside, go outside. Even, I'm not saying that you have to like go to a party or a friend's house or something. You can just take a walk because it helps you reconnect with nature and indirectly with yourself. Now back in school, I like going to the mountain. I don't know, I have like I love going to the mountain actually. And I don't know, it just helps me, like, it's far away from other people, the world. It's quiet and it's peaceful. I should really go to the mountain again, but that's like when I get back to school. Now, depression makes you focus on yourself and all the things that aren't probably working for you. And the most annoying part, because I've been there before, and the most annoying part is that you never figure out a way to change it. You know, I like did not want to talk about this, but recently have been like feeling really down, and I kind of find it funny because I'm like always the person like telling, like helping, advising, being there for people when they're like feeling down. But then I do feel down too sometimes. And when I feel down, I do not know what to do. And sometimes I do know what to do, but I don't know how to do it. So it's crazy. Depression can make you feel trapped in your story and your thoughts. And when you're depressed, actually, you become a prisoner of your ego where no air, no nothing from outside can get in. But when you spend more time in nature, you not only take the view of yourself, but you see the world as something bigger and larger than yourself. It helps you to shrink your ego and also helps you to feel connected to everything around you. So do not choose to be in captivity. Like since the beginning of this week, I've been like having a hard time. I've been feeling down and I did not talk to anyone about it. But last night I just went outside. I actually went outside because I wanted peace and quiet to receive a phone call. But then after the phone call, I was just, it was at night and there were like the stars shining in the sky and the breeze was blowing, and I was just like, life is actually beautiful. I'm just having a shitty time processing all the events that have happened to me lately, but life is beautiful. And I just had that shift in my mind. And when I went back inside, I was like at the top of my energy. And I don't know how that shift happened, but trust me when I tell you that take a walk outside or just go outside, get sunlight. If Although it wasn't during the day, I still connected with my natural environment. I still saw the sky. The moon was shining so bright last night. The stars. I love the stars. They are so beautiful. So basically, just go outside and connect with the natural environment because it brings a peace and just helps you connect with yourself. It's really helpful, trust me. So that's basically the most valid and practical advice I can give you if you're like disconnected from the natural world and it's giving, like, it's causing depression. Just go outside. It's that simple. So just let yourself out today. I know it can be hard to like stand up because when you're depressed, you feel trapped and you do not have the energy to even do normal chores, and you can sleep all day and stay in your bed all day and just be in that same spot. Just probably go get food, go back to your bed, press your phone, and all of that. I'm just telling you, trust me, when you go outside, give it like maybe 15 to 30 minutes every day. Spend time outside, and you begin to see the changes. Trust me, it's very helpful. And the next cause of depression, which is like the seventh cause of depression that I'm going to be talking about today, is disconnection from a hopeful or secure future. I can remember that I just said that depression makes you feel trapped in your story and your thoughts. Well, since you feel trapped, like, in whatever it is that you're going through, you never see yourself as surviving beyond that point. You basically feel stuck in what I'll call an eternal traffic jam, and there's like no hope for the future. Now, extremely depressed people become disconnected from a sense of the future, and it's easy to see how lack of hope for a good future makes you depressed. And depression, in turn, feeds the hopelessness and the faulty thoughts about your future possibilities. Now, I would say this, that I never saw myself living up to this age that I am at today. Um, when I was like 16 or so, I was having suicidal thoughts. I like never saw myself like going past that. Like, I never thought I would survive. I thought that one day I would just have the courage to act on one of the suicidal thoughts I had. And although I did have a suicidal attempt, which was like last year, that was early last year, I had a suicidal attempt, but then even last year, up till last year, not even when I was like 16 years old now, I'm way past, years past 16 years old. And last year I had a suicidal attempt. And when I was at that point, which was what I would term as the lowest point in my entire life, I did not see myself as getting past that point. I never imagined the fact that I would be here today, even having a podcast and talking about this stuff. I never imagined that. But then, when people tell you stuff like, this too shall pass, it always seems like, yeah, I know, but then you don't really know, you don't really understand or take in that possibility that there is still a hope, that there is something better, so much more better to come. So, the best way to not feel hopeless is to get up and do something. Don't wait for good things to happen to you. If you go out and make some good things happen, you will fill the world with hope, and you will also fill yourself with hope. By the way, it was Barack Obama that said that. He said that the best way to not feel hopeless is to get up and do something. So I would just suggest, it might be something so minor, like just something that you enjoy doing. You can do that for like 5-10 minutes, even more than that. You don't have to like time yourself. Just get up and do something. You don't have to get any monetary thing in return. Just keep yourself busy. When I mean like busy, I don't mean like hustle culture, productivity kind of thing. Busy, just something that can help you look forward to the next time you would do it, or the next thing that is going to happen. It's really helpful. It can really help when the feelings of depression start to like consume you. And now we are going to the biological cause of depression. Now this can be really weird because as a student, like in secondary school, I never really liked biology, even though I like got an A because I'm smart, okay. But then I didn't really like biology. It was too wide. Like, biology is a wide subject. There are so many things to learn, and it feels like there's always a new thing to learn in biology. But anyways, we are talking about the role of the brain as a cause of depression. Now, certain people believe that depression is a brain disease. They believe it occurs as a result of the lack of enough serotonin in your brain. And I think I've talked about what serotonin is when I was talking about mental health, which was like the last episode. If you listen to like the last 2 episodes, you have greater insight into mental health, serotonin, and all of that. But people believe that depression occurs as a lack of enough serotonin in your brain. But is that all? Is that like the major cause of depression? You know, this theory supports the fact that if you have depression as a result of your brain malfunctioning, then it cannot be changed or fixed. You can only like take antidepressants to deal with it. And antidepressants are like medication like prescribed by the doctor, psychologist, to help deal with depression and stuff. And I'm not against antidepressants, okay? I'm not. If you're prescribed antidepressants to help with your depression, yeah, take it. Follow the prescriptions of the doctor. But I'm just saying that there are more reasons to the feelings of depression coming up than just your brain malfunctioning. Which means that if the parts of your brain that relates to being unhappy are more on, like, I don't know how to explain this. If you believe that depression is as a result of your brain malfunctioning, then it means that you're like in a fixed situation that you have no control over. But that is not right, because your brain chemistry is not fixed. Now, Mark Lewis is a neuroscientist, and he came up with this term called neuroplasticity to explain it. He said neuroplasticity is the tendency for the brain to continue to restructure itself based on experience, which means that your brain is constantly changing as a result of your life experiences. Your brain is constantly changing to meet your needs. For as long as you live, neuroplasticity never stops, because it's like restructures your brain based on experience. So basically, your brain is always changing. A doctor telling a depressed person that their brain is messed up and cannot be fixed is a lie. Your brain can actually be messed up. Yes, I'm not saying that's not possible, but then brains are changing their wiring all the time. A depressed person can go for a brain scan and try to figure out what's happening with them with a brain scan, but a brain scan is only a snapshot of a moving picture. The brain changes as you become depressed and anxious, and it changes again when you stop being depressed and anxious. It's always changing in response to signals from this world. And now, I'm not saying that your brain cannot be messed up. It can. You can have depression because of something malfunctioning in your brain, but that is not all. That doesn't mean that, like, your situation is fixed or something. The social and psychological reasons for depression that I've mentioned earlier, they have the capacity to change how your brain works. So basically, everything related to your life and personal circumstances cause depression. You can't figure out the root of your pain by dismantling your brain. That wasn't supposed to rhyme, by the way, but you have to look for signals, which are your life experiences. You can be like, your brain wiring can change or can shift if you have a shift in the values that you prioritize. It can change or shift if you have like a change of environment and you just find yourself around people that bring you down emotionally. So basically, you just have to look for the signals that cause that shift in your brain, and they are your life experiences. Let's look at this case scenario. Let's say there's a lady called Jenna, and Jenna, for whatever reason it is, ended a relationship with her boyfriend. And within 1 week of that happening, within 1 week of her like breaking up with her boyfriend, she also loses a close family member. Now all of a sudden, that is, that is saddening, that is painful, that is overwhelming, and I do not even wish for anybody to be in this kind of situation right now. And if you are struggling with that right now, I am so sorry. Like, the peace of the Lord is upon you right now, in Jesus' name, amen. Because all of that is actually saddening, painful, and overwhelming, but because you're going through so much pain, your brain will assume that the only state of survival you need is to shed the synapses that relate to the things that give you joy and pleasure, and strengthen the synapses that relate to fear and despair. Which is why you see yourself that when you're getting depressed, you no longer feel happy about the things that once made you happy. That's because your brain is trying to protect you and is trying to shed those things that used to give you joy and pleasure before. Now, despite the fact that Jenna was like going through a really bad stuff, like she had a series of life events that were traumatic, does that mean that Jenna's brain was the cause of her depression? The answer is no. Did Jenna's brain react to the loss of her loved ones? Yes. Was Jenna still depressed after grieving her loved one and moving on? Yes. And why is that? This is because her brain is still in that state of releasing synapses that relate to despair. The pain caused by life going wrong can trigger a response that is so powerful that the brain tends to stay there in that pain response until something pushes it out of that corner into a more flexible place. And guess what? If the world keeps causing you deep pain, you will stay trapped in that, even though there are like weeks, months have passed after that event has occurred. You still feel depressed. It is so much possible. And while it's wrong, this is like what John Cassiopo, I really do not know how to pronounce his name. He's a scientist. I don't know, y'all scientists be having weird names. Anyways, John, his surname, I don't know how to pronounce it. He described this as the snowballing effect. And while it's wrong to say that the origin of depression is a malfunction in your brain chemistry, it is also equally wrong to say that the responses in your brain can make the depression worse. So the question I would want you to ask yourself today is, what's my head inside of? When did I start feeling this way? What experiences has my brain attached itself to and refused to move on from? Stop seeing yourself as being a victim, okay, of that circumstance. You are not a victim. You have the power to move on from whatever it is that happened to you. All you have to do is to be intentional about it. Sit down one day and just decide to take that trajectory and just think back to what happened. When did you start feeling this way? What has your brain attached itself to? And slowly try to think back and try to reconnect or find new things that can help you cope with that. Sometimes you are in a healing phase and you want to try and just do the things that you used to do before that used to bring you pleasure, but sometimes you are outgrown that and you have to find new things that will help you get through the rest of your life. Now we are moving on to what I think is actually the last cause of depression that Drew and Harry mentioned. It's also biological, and that's the role of the genes, your genetic structure. It's actually true that mental illness like depression and other mental illnesses can be transferred through the genes, but then it does not account for most of what is actually going on. Some people think that they are born with depression. Some others see depression as a lost twin that was born in the womb alongside with them, which is very weird. But then a group of scientists studied the genetic basis of depression, and they found out that having a variant of a gene called 5-HTT relates to becoming depressed. We are all born with a genetic inheritance, but your genes are activated by your environment. It's very similar to your brain changing in response to your life experiences. Now, if you have a flavor of the 5-HTT, you have a high risk of getting depression, but only in a certain environment, which means if you have the 5-HTT, you are more likely to become depressed only if you experienced a great deal of childhood trauma, which means that if those terrible or traumatic events did not happen to you, even if you had that 5-HTT gene, you were no more likely to become depressed than anyone else. Now, genes increase your sensitivity, but they aren't the cause. Your genes can make you more vulnerable to having a high risk of depression, but your genes do not write your destiny. The genetic factors that contribute to depression and anxiety are very real, but they also need a trigger. They need a trigger in your environment or your psychology. Your genes can super change these factors, but they cannot create them alone. Which means that Yes, a biological change can actually make you more vulnerable, but it's more of your life experiences that can trigger those biological changes. Just like, for example, people with glandular fever or underactive thyroids are significantly more likely to become depressed. If you have, if you like have a certain gene, which is the 5-HTC gene, and there is that trigger in your environment, you are more likely to have depression. But that is only if there is like a traumatic experience that has occurred, then you are more likely to have the depression. And those are like the 9 causes of depression, major causes of depression. There might be other causes of depression, but according to what was in the book by Joanne Hari, the 9 major causes of depression are what I just listed. And I think the one I added was standards of culture. That's like the last cause of depression that we're going to be talking about today. Standards of culture. Certainly you have heard of depressed celebrities, right? Even there are celebrities that have committed suicide. But then why do they do it? They seemingly had everything that culture said is necessary for happiness and fulfillment. So why do they still feel miserable that they saw suicide as the only way out? It's not actually because they were broken, but it's because the culture is broken. Culture tells you that you need to have a car, a house, lots of money in the bank, and other extrinsic values that I talked about earlier in order to attain happiness and fulfillment. But then when you get that, you feel empty. You can have everything a person could possibly need by the standards of culture, but then those standards can badly misjudge what a human actually needs in order to have a good life. Culture can create a picture of what you need to be happy, but most times, if not all the time, it doesn't actually fit with what you need to be happy. So don't say, because there are so many people that have said that uh this would make you happy, and then you do what they said would make you happy, but then you still do not feel happy. You do not get that fulfillment out of it. Depression should be regarded as a reaction to our life experiences. It's a response to how we live. It could happen to any of us. Whatever the cause of your depression may be, it's actually rational, it's sane, and it might be painful too, but you are not crazy for feeling this way. You are not broken. You are not defective. So just give meaning to your pain today. And we have come to the end of today's episode. And please, I just want to note that all the causes and solutions of depression that I have mentioned in today's episode are lessons from Joanne Hari's book, and they are not meant to invalidate your own experience, your personal experience, or diagnosis, but just to shed light on the true causes of depression. We have come to the end of today's episode, and I am so grateful that you tuned in today. If you really enjoyed this episode on depression, please share it and help Healthy Minds Talk reach even more amazing listeners like you. Be sure to check out our Instagram page at thismylittle_world_ and follow me on Twitter at praise_hm. The links will be in the description, and I would see you next Monday. Thank you so much for being a faithful listener and joining us all through the month of May, which was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I am so happy that you sat and just listened to every episode that I had to share on series of mental health. Thank you so much. I will see you guys on the next series, which is going to be opening next Monday.